The year is 1991. It is a global turning point in history. The Cold War has just ended, the Berlin Wall has fallen. Men and women from all around the world rejoice in appreciation for the new direction that the world is going. Everyone is starting to work together to advance the world from its tense bindings towards a technological future.
This is called domination!
Showing true stability, the first American concert was held in Moscow in 1991. Known as Monsters at Moscow, this venue featured several heavy metal artists such as Metallica, AC/DC, and Pantera. The turnout of attendance was very high. There were around 1.5 million people who had been recorded, plus extra, making this the second largest concert ever on the face of the earth to ever be recorded. With the concert and the music that was played there, such as the new, deeper, heavy metal style of Pantera and Metallica at the time, really led to the new attitude of society. A year later, in the year 1992, the tiny Texas-based company id Software releases a title that would not only be their big break, but it would change the entire industry of gaming: Wolfenstein 3D. At a glance, Wolfenstein doesn't look like much to the modern eye, but when it was released, it was the pinnacle of graphic capabilities. It left the players virtually awed by seamless texturing and the integration felt by the players. Wolfenstein 3D was a milestone in the video game industry, as it sparked a new mainstream genre, the first-person shooter. This amazing starting zone just celebrated its 20th year anniversary in May of this year, and it was put online for free for all of us to play. A year later, the same developers, id Software, released yet another milestone. They released one of the most controversial games of all time, Doom. This vintage classic came and took the industry by force, bringing with it literally the horrors of hell for the players to wall around it. Filled with pentagrams, gore, and other plain messed up imagery, the texture artists on this project really set the tone with the idea that there would be nothing too gruesome for video games. This title has gone down in history as the game that made the first-person shooter genre hit mainstream. Duke Nukem 3D. This comedic shooter rolled around the block in 1996 at the pinnacle of the shooter sprite era.
Come get some. Damn, those alien bastards are gonna pay for shooting up my ride.
The game held a massive parody overtone, making fun of a lot of different popular culture items, such as the Postal and Aliens movie. Duke Nukem 3D even comes around and takes a crack at id Software's Doom. The Doom Marine's death sprite can be found on the level. Duke's one-liner joke:
That's one doomed Space Marine.
Duke 3D was one of the last FPS games to use sprites before the introduction of models.
Holy shit.
id Software had not stopped just with its super release of Doom. After the release of a sequel, Doom 2 and an expansion pack, it began to immediately work on a new game system, one that was better capable than the id Tech 1. This new engine, known at the time as the Quake engine, allowed for the use of polygons and a new coming feature to video games at the time: animated models instead of sequenced sprites. Quake took the industry by storm as Doom had once before, and changed everything. It created yet another wake-up call for developers once again. id Software has brought the future to the table, setting the standard once more. It created new jobs in the industry through modelers. This changing point in the industry turned texture artists to pair with the skills of 3D modeling. Texture styles would no longer be on virtual camera. It would need to be built around models from now on. Half-Life. In 1998, this shooter came to be, and it was an instant classic. Half-Life swiftly won over 50 Game of the Year's award in 1998. It featured a bright new look to the industry, the linear FPS experience. The graphics were incredible, breathtaking, as some would say. The engine running the game was a modified Quake engine. The engine was modified to handle all sorts of environments, from the boxing confinements of rooms and tunnels to the outside open landscapes. This project was a huge texturing job for the artists at Valve. All of the models were round for the most part, not boxy as they had been with titles such as Quake. And in the game, there was a new revolution for the texture era: reflective textures. With two very successful expansion episodes, Opposing Force and Blue Shift, this was another milestone for the industry. Parallel episodic adventures through different points of view of multiple characters. It also showed that textures and models could be carried from game to game to show a similar storyline through a series. id Software released this title in 1998. It was a simple concept to use, a new form of gaming that had been created, but it had not been used extensively quite yet: the online multiplayer shooter. This title, along with Valve's Counter-Strike, were just a few titles in which took the online shooter game and rocketed it skyward. The texture artists had to learn how to make things look good and to have it play nice performance-wise over the nets. Halo. This title is yet another instant classic. Bungie's big break from their lesser-known Marathon era shook the world by the neck in several aspects. The graphics were amazing compared to anything seen before. The models and textures worked seamlessly with each other beautifully. Not only were the graphics amazing, but this game brought the FPS to the consoles. This was the game that was credited for single-handedly saving the Xbox that is so cherished today.
Sorry, babe. I'm an ambitious girl. You're just small time.
This revolutionary title was released in the early 2000s by the now giant developer Rockstar. Grand Theft Auto 3 was a huge turn in the series from the top-down driving game that the first two were. Grand Theft Auto 3 had transformed the series into an open-world third-person shooter. This wildly popular game was a huge success, and it was one of the first games to ever have an open world. Texture artists on this project had to make the game look good and work well with console publishers. The start of one of the most popular FPS series in the industry to date, Call of Duty. This game was set in World War II. The shooter broke the common sci-fi setting and went to the long-past global conflict to tell a story. This project was created with the end goal of making a blockbuster-worthy linear experience. Graphics in the game were quite advanced for the age of release, and this is most likely due to the availability of references to the models and environment instead of the modelers and the artists creating material with their imagination. This added to an HD experience. While this title was not a huge success like the others on this list, it did have one thing over any of those listed before: high-definition environment, water, and land life. Far Cry takes place on a small group of oceanic islands, all with lush vegetation and jungle settings. During the development, the artist had to pay a large amount of attention to details of the environment and plant life to reduce the vast jungles that are seen in the game. Far Cry set a benchmark in the environmental detail and art for future titles to base upon. In 2004, id Software took its nearly deceased series, Doom, and took a lot of time to reboot the series. Despite being called Doom 3, there was no ties to the first two. Doom 3 was a blast from the past. It had won the best of E3 and it was an extremely highly anticipated game. The title used the brand new id Tech 4, which, even to this day, is one of the most versatile graphics engines ever created. The engine is still used today to create some of the best in graphics seen. Doom 3 was a huge success in the graphical aspect. It was one of the first games to have shadows that worked from directions of lighting and shadows that interacted with models. All of the eeriness of the dim lighting, id Software made this title as best as it could be with state-of-the-art shadowing, ambience, and sound mixing. With the graphically advanced mixture of this game, it still does not hesitate to deliver quite a few scares onto the players through gameplay. Half-Life 2. In 2005, yet another blast from the past emerged from Valve's hit series, Half-Life. Half-Life 2 takes place in a near-future European metropolis, with the overlying tone of human suppression from an overbearing dominator alien species. The textures are beautiful in the essence that the player is running around a crumbling world with shiny weaponry against his dominator race. The game uses the newly developed Source engine which, much like the id Tech 4, is a hugely versatile system. The game holds a very great mixture between how the textures work and with not only the highly detailed models, but the extensive particle system. This game is a true example of a greatly balanced game. BioShock. This title is a huge seller on the Xbox 360 in 2006. BioShock was another blockbuster title that took the linear stories as Call of Duty had, but instead to the 50s instead of World War II. Unlike Call of Duty, BioShock mixed history with science fiction. The setting, of course, is a large underwater city built under the surface of the Atlantic. The game took a dark atmosphere and the artists worked very hard to produce highly detailed water effects. Water is one of the final destinations for perfection of art in the video game industry, as it is one of the hardest things to animate. This title brought a more spiritual approach to the industry. This game was made with weird in mind. It was meant to bend the way we logically see things. Using a modified id Tech 4 engine, the game never fails to bend your even perception on even the most basic things. At several times in the game, you can use box teleporters to reach several planes and sizes, you can walk on the walls and ceilings, and you can even change the entire force of gravity in different directions. The weapons used in the game are even biological creatures mixed with metallic material. This would have been quite a job for the artists of the game. Gears of War. In 2006, a small developer by the name of Epic releases this very gory third-person shooter. Gears of War became one of the most purchased games for the Xbox alongside of Halo and Call of Duty. The game uses an extensive particle and GIB system. GIB is the common term for dismantled body part. The game blended models with the environment in a perfect balance, allowing the artist to focus on all of the models equally. Call of Duty 4. The industry was running the World War II setting into the ground. Fans were growing tired of it. Infinity Ward, one of the new developers for the Call of Duty franchise, changed the series and took it to the very near future. The entire game's premises revolves around the central idea of a third world war. Infinity Ward would also decide to take a more realistic approach for the future games in the series. There would no longer be games based off the World War II era. Modern Warfare was here to stay. The game featured state-of-the-art graphics and modeling, which would set a benchmark in the industry. Crysis 2. This title is possibly one of the most impressive shooters of the past 10 years. With the powerful Cry 3 engine and Microsoft's DirectX 11, Crysis 2 had finally reached the top rung of the graphical ladder. True photorealism. There are times in this game that I personally cannot distinguish the game between the near-distant future that the title portrays. Even without the Ultra Texture Pack, which can be downloaded in the game's setting, it still looks pretty great. Crysis 2 has been labeled as the most graphically advanced game ever released on all of the consoles and PC. It's truly amazing what the artist and others who worked on this title did from the period of 2007 to its release in 2011.